This is Jan Gebert, director of When the War Comes. My name is Denis Demmerle. We are here talking about a movie which is screened in the section of Frustration and Freedom at 30th FilmFestival Cottbus. Von Frust und Freiheit, as we say in German. It's a pleasure for me to have Jan here, at least online, because there is no possibility to meet in person in these days, as we all know. As I'm also one of the two curators, my colleague Cornelia Reichel and me, we curated the whole section. It's a extra honor for me to talk to you in this moment. Let's start with your film itself. It's kind of unbelievable the topic you found. I remember it when I watched the movie 2 years ago at Berlinale it was 2018.
Yeah.
And I was shocked and also a bit puzzled afterwards.
Okay.
Where did you meet Peter Svercek? Maybe I pronounce it wrong. I'm pretty sure I do.
No, you could pronounce it perfectly. Well, I read an article about that paramilitary group. And at that time, when I discovered the group, I think it was 2015, it was a new thing in Europe. You know, nowadays, especially in the Eastern Europe, you have lots of paramilitary groups. But at that time, it was something new. And when I learned about the medium age of those people, which they were mostly teenagers, then they got all my attention. And also the fact that it's happening, you know, in the EU, it struck me, and I almost didn't have to see them live to realize that this is a topic for a feature film. So I discovered them, you know, through an article, and then step by step, I started to contact those people. The leader, Peter Svercek, I found him on Facebook. That was the first touch. Then step by step, you know, I visited him for the first time, and surprisingly, he was somehow, you know, he was kind of attention whore, really. He wanted media attention, so it was my advantage. You know, he on one hand he was pretty scared of the media, but at the same time he felt like he wants to be a kind of media superstar as well. So I think I had to play with those cards, and finally I managed to film him the way I wanted to. I didn't have to do any compromises.
He's a quite self-confident guy. So it's not a total surprise that he's not that he's not suspicious about what you're doing. But still, for me, it was curious to see that at least in the movie, in the film, he shows no doubts. Have there been moments where he was like, Jan, do we possibly cut this or that? Or was he always like, okay, I'm in it, fully agree, whatever you do?
Well, mostly while we actually made it to the set, and I can call it a set, but the place where they trained or did any kind of other actions. Once we were there, he was pretty busy with his own stuff, and he didn't pay much attention to us. But he had this great advantage that I lived 400 kilometers from the place where he lives. So when he did not, you know, notify me about what's happening, then I had zero chance to film it. So he pretty much tried to filter what he wants to, you know, be filmed, and what he doesn't want to be filmed. So I had to, you know, do all these. I had to convince him all the way, you know, all the way through the film, that we need this and we need that, and it's pretty difficult, to deal with this kind of person, which, as far as the values go, he's on the other side. And I didn't want to lie to him at the same time. So it was pretty, tricky kind of conversation. And it's difficult to keep your integrity and to deal with that kind of people. So it was very difficult all the way through, all the way through these 3 years that I was filming them.
I can imagine that this is one of the most tricky parts of the project, not to glorify him and find an own position without telling the people what they should think, isn't it?
Well, I've learned that to film all those trainings, military trainings, is the easiest stuff. But what I needed to show is also the other side, the other face of this group, the other face of the leader, and I had to employ a kind of subversive strategies to get underneath the surface. For instance, I sensed intuitively that this guy, doesn't want to remain a military guy or a soldier or imitation of a soldier. His real goal is to get into the politics. I sensed it. So, but I needed to get it into the film because they passed themselves off as anti-political, non-political organization, and they always denied that they would want to enter the politics, and I had to get it there. So I had to, I had to use these subversive strategies. For instance, when Deutsche Welle wanted to make an interview with the guy, I contacted the crew beforehand, and I asked them whether they could ask the leader if he wants to join the politics. And he of course said, no, I don't want to join the politics. But then I follow him with the camera, and he was so surprised by that question that he needs to, tell it to a friend. Well, they asked me about the politics, and of course I couldn't tell them truth. So this is the way I managed, I guess, to show the double face of this leader, something that he didn't want to show. And also there are scenes like them meeting by coincidence, the stream of thousands of immigrants on the Austrian-Hungarian Slovakian border. And at that point, they didn't control themselves, and they started to yell at them and cursing. And this is also something that showed the true colors of those people. And I think I managed to get there these moments. And unless I did, it wouldn't be a good film. But I guess I managed to do it. And I don't think that it needs any kind of third person that would, tell you what to think about it, because you see right into their heads, and you see the true colors of those people.
It's really, really scary to watch and observe them, how they create and build up their own world, and also kind of state in the state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And also how less the public cares.
Mm-hmm.
I remember this scene on when they did their march in the middle of this village town, and
Mm-hmm.
people are just kind of they don't pay attention, let's say it like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How did you feel in these moments about the whole situation, which is kind of, for me it was scary.
Yeah, I think the silence is probably the scariest thing about the film. And at that time, everybody was silent. I think after the film, a lot of people realized, including people in the government, that this group is not so okay, and it kind of changed, and even the number of that group of the militants of that group decreased significantly. But at that time, yeah, nobody really cared about what's happening. And what I saw was basically the green light. Or the society just let them do what they needed to do, which is always scary.
How would you describe the situation or the society nowadays, like some years later?
Yeah, well, in Slovakia, like lots of things changed. When we were premiering the film in Berlinale, exactly in those days, mafia killed, an investigative journalist, Jan Kuciak, and lots of things changed after it because the police and the government was not actually willing to investigate the murder, but the public started to demonstrate against it, and they really pushed hard on the government to investigate it, and the media started to really worry about what's happening, and things started to change. The political course of Slovakia is definitely different now, and they started to clear out really all the mess they had from the 90s. On the governmental level, on the police level, and all these institutions are changing now, and I think all the atmosphere, the whole atmosphere in the country has changed for the better. So I think including the tolerance to those groups changed. They are now much better monitored. There were some restrictions introduced concerning the freedom of those groups, and I think they managed to deal with it in the last years.
To put the film into the bigger picture of our section of frustration and freedom, we are looking on transformations in societies, but we want to stay close to the people, which are our protagonists in movies and also in real life.
Mm-hmm.
How did you how do you remember the period of change, and do you think it's the change brought more frustration or more freedom?
You mean the change in Slovakia?
Yeah, after the system collapsed 30 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think it has lots to do with the frustration of the people, because people probably just had enough, and this was just like with the murder of Jan Kuciak, the investigative journalist. They reached the point that after it they couldn't tolerate it anymore, and I think it bursted out. It bursted out, and it started an avalanche of change that hasn't stopped yet. It's really rolling, and it's very powerful. I kind of envy them, because I live in Czech Republic. We would need such thing as well in our politics.
And is there also also for you in personal? Do you feel any liberation out of these processes in the last 30 years? Also, and possibilities. I guess we are in the same age, so I guess our world changed fundamentally.
Yeah, but what do you mean? Like the last change after those
For
30
Germany,
years?
it was the reunification of the country after the 30 years ago, and also, but the raise of the Iron Curtain and the loss of the influence of Russia and the former eastern part. I guess it uh, brought possibilities.
Sure, yeah. Well, concerning the last 30 years, I think that in 2016 or 15, when I started to film When the War Comes in that group, I felt that those, at that time, 25 years, 26 years of democracy were under threat, you know. There was Brexit on the way, there was Donald Trump on the way, there were these groups on the way. We had like a similar guy like Donald Trump in the Prague Castle, you know, as a president. You have such guy as a prime minister, and we see those people all around Central Europe. So I felt that this development that is like a great achievement of Europe, I guess, was threatened, and this film was basically my statement to it. You know, that you see a group of people that is on the outskirts of the society because they are extremists. So at the beginning you see them in the forest, but in the end you see them basically entering the politics, which is something that was happening at that time and is still happening in Europe. And this is my statement, you know, that something that was extreme a couple of years ago now is right in the mainstream, which scares me, which is not normal and shouldn't remain that way. So well, you know, what happened after the fall of communism is not like a victory for good. You know, we need to fight for democracy every day, because the battle is not won yet. And never will be, I guess. There will, especially in Central Europe, there will always be those two sides, clashing each other.
I agree. It'll be a challenge for ours and the next and following generations too, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess I'm fine. I guess you will. This was a nice insight of your opinions, also with a bit distance now. Good to hear and good to talk to you.
Yeah,
thanks a lot.
Pleasure. Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thanks.
And yeah, maybe we see you again with maybe another project in Germany or even in Cottbus.
Hopefully, yeah. Thank you very much.
Would be my pleasure. Have a nice evening.
Have a nice evening too.
Bye. Ciao.
Bye.